Welcome to the Inform Advocate Podcast. And this is Sharon, your host. And this is the intersection of self care, advocacy, and compassion for self caregivers. So, on this episode, what we're going to talk about using your internal resources, your internal GPS. And pretty much what I mean by that is it's that thing inside you that pretty much really help guide you. And we all have kind of like a default coping mechanism. Now, for some individuals who may have experienced certain things, especially when we're under stress, especially if there's trauma. And remember, in previous episodes, we talked about stress and trauma, and that the body really doesn't know the difference. And so you can go back to the previous episode and listen a little bit more in depth with that. So, in saying that, meaning that a lot of times we're operating, with the sympathetic nervous system turned on. And so the thing is that in general, you really do have a awesome internal GPS, awesome internal resources. And remember the 555 stress busters, you can use those things to turn it off, or I was saying to turn it off, meaning to turn off the fight, flight, freeze, to put the brakes on that, because what that allows you to is to have that pause so that you can make healthy choices. And that is the main purpose of all of that. And just know that you are unique and that you really do have a richness in you. It's just that when you're stressed or when there's trauma going on, your body is really just fighting for its life. It's pretty much is in a pool, and instead of it swimming, it thinks that it's drowning. And by you cultivating self-care practices, you're teaching yourself how to swim in the storm instead of coming up for breath, as if you don't know how to swim. And even if you literally do not know how to swim, again, the more that you practice, the better that you get. Same thing when it comes to your body. And so, again, the main purpose of you cultivating self-care, whether you are a personal self-care giver or you're a professional self-care giver. And remember, with professional self-care givers, those individuals in the medical field, in the mental health field, first responders, teachers, those individuals in the military, and just pretty much those who support and take care of other people in so many different ways, because it impacts a person really mental and physical well-being, leaders, when it comes to, work, supervisors and of the sort. And so I want you to remember that you can always use your internal resources. And we all have, like I said before, a default way of coping. Now, I do want to point out is that for anyone who have experienced addiction, and not just addiction to drugs and alcohol, it can be addiction to eating, it can be addiction to sex, it can be addiction to spending, that for when that is activated, sometimes for some individuals, when they're under stress, then it activates that. And so that's another reason to practice healthy coping mechanism, because it helps override, I would say, it overrides that and reteaches your body and your mind not to default to that. And it takes lots of practice for those individuals who have those experiences. And so And the other thing is too, is that by having that opportunity to pause, is that it allows you to be in the space where you can have clarity when you are making decisions, especially if you're making life-changing decisions, because it gives you the opportunity to have choices when you're making decisions when it comes to that. So again, by using your internal resources, it can give you a sense of hope. And that's the other thing, I want everyone to know because, like in a previous episode, I kind of talked about, a little bit about the different resources when it comes to mental health, when it comes to mental wellness, even, like the work that it takes when someone, has medical conditions and someone is dealing with, just any type of stress. It doesn't always, mean that someone has a diagnosis of a mental illness, because of the fact when we're experiencing stress, it takes a toll on us. But know that you can depend on yourself. And again, when it comes to this podcast, we're kind of focusing on that gap where someone may be in therapy, there may not be, but especially if you're seeking services, let's say if you're in a crisis and you're seeking services, but it just does not meet the what we call criteria, let's say for hospital inpatient admission, and sometimes they may not even meet the criteria for a lower level of care, such as partial hospitalization or intensive outpatient program. And then there's some other programs, especially when it comes to children. So again, this podcast is to help you to recognize and know that there are so many different tools out there, so many different resources that you may not see, I want to say, like up front. And so some of them may be by word of mouth, some of them may be, you may be able to search and just know that there are so many different ways of how you can heal, of how you can get better. And remember, definitely go back and listen to the episode of stress and trauma, because that is so, so important, and even the one that when I was talking about it takes work, it takes effort when it comes to mental health, and even it takes work when it comes to dealing with medical conditions, meaning that it's the work that we put in, and sometimes it does take time. There are conversations that I've had with people. There are people that I've seen where it can take, months, and even some people talk about years in order for them to get better. And I just want you to know that, because once you're able to like calm your settle your body, as I say, Resmaa Menakem definitely educated on that. Settle your body so that you can be connected with yourself and be in the present moment. Then again, you can be able to again make choices, and where you can make some healthy choices as well. And so this is the main thing, about this particular podcast. Just want to really open the door and remind you that you have your own internal resources, that default coping mechanism, pretty much you have, positive thoughts that come down and that you can believe and you can rely on. So definitely hold on to those things and just know that what you may be experiencing, it is going to pass and you're going to get through it. And it takes time and it takes effort. And you really have the internal capacity to heal and get better. Have conversations with people. Let's start normalizing talking about it and asking questions, especially if you know of someone or someone knows of someone and they're at a good place where they're able to talk about their experience and what they did. Of course, there's no cookie cutter or anything like that. It can be different for each person, but the bottom line is that it takes effort and you can do it. And so use your internal, GPS to help guide you through those hard times, to put the brakes on the fight, flight, freeze, to use different tools and practices to self-regulate so that your nervous system will not be so overloaded, so that you can be who you are, and especially if you are a self-caregiver. But remember, for all of us, we're all self-caregivers, even if we're not supporting other people, because of the fact it's about us taking care of ourselves first, which is the key, which is the gateway of supporting others. And so we need to be in a healthy place so that we can help others. And especially even if we're not, where we can be supportive of someone when that time comes. And so again, thank you for listening to the Informed Advocate podcast.